Dad, don't go home. Those were the words that echoed in my ears at midnight, whispered through the phone, and sent a chill down my spine. My name is Robert Miller, and I'm 62 years old. I've lived a full life, raised a family, and worked hard every day, just like any man who wants to build a legacy. But that night, everything changed. My daughter's voice, usually filled with warmth and affection, was now full of fear and urgency. I hadn't heard from her in days, and here she was, calling me at the most unexpected hour. What could possibly be so urgent? What could she have been hiding? My mind raced as I pulled myself out of bed and grabbed my jacket, not knowing what awaited me. I drove through the quiet streets, my thoughts tangled in confusion. For years I had been the rock of this family. I never questioned my children's intentions, always assuming the best in them. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the weight of something unknown pressed on my chest, and I had no choice but to follow my gut. As I approached my house, a sense of dread settled in my stomach. The lights inside were dim, and the silence that surrounded the house felt unnatural. My daughter had said, "Don't go home." But why? Was she in trouble? Was something wrong with her mother? Or was it something darker, something I couldn't yet comprehend? I parked the car and stared at the front door, hesitant to step inside. The fear I felt was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I took a deep breath and walked up the porch steps, my hand shaking slightly as I reached for the doorknob. It was then that I saw it, the note, folded neatly and resting on the doorstep. My heart skipped a beat. What did it mean? What had I just walked into? As I unfolded the note, a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Dad, don't go home. The words that haunted me earlier seemed to take on a new meaning now, sending my thoughts spiraling. The mystery deepened, and I was about to uncover something that would freeze me in my tracks, something I never imagined could happen in my own family. As I stood there, staring at the note in my hand, my heart began to race. I couldn't understand what was happening, or why my daughter had called me so urgently, telling me not to come home. My fingers trembled as I folded the note back up, slipping it into my jacket pocket. I looked around the street. Everything seemed still, too still. The night air was cool against my skin, but it did nothing to calm the storm brewing inside me. I walked back to the car, my mind spinning. I hadn't heard from her in days, not since we had that brief chat about the house and her new job. Everything seemed normal then. But now, something was wrong, and I was determined to find out what. I drove to my daughter's house, my thoughts a tangled mess. My daughter Lisa had always been the strong one in the family. She was independent, smart, and fiercely protective of her family. But tonight, her voice had sounded different. There was an edge to it, a sense of desperation that made my stomach churn. As I parked in front of her house, I saw the light in the kitchen window flicker before going dark. I knew she was home. But why wouldn't she open the door? I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes as I walked to the front door. My hand hovered over the doorbell, unsure of what to do. Should I ring it? Knock? I didn't want to push too hard, but I needed answers. I had to know what was going on. Finally, I rang the doorbell. It echoed through the silence, but there was no answer. I waited, listening for any sound from inside. Nothing. I rang it again. And then I heard it, a faint shuffle of footsteps inside, followed by a click of the lock. The door slowly creaked open, revealing my daughter, standing there, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. Her hands were shaking as she motioned for me to come inside. I stepped in, my heart still pounding. "Dad," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You shouldn't have come." The words struck me like a punch to the gut. What had happened? What had she gotten herself into? I followed her through the dark house, trying to make sense of everything. The usual warmth of her home was gone. The air felt thick, suffocating. I asked again, my voice trembling. This time, "Lisa, what's going on? What's so important that you couldn't tell me over the phone?" She hesitated before speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't know how. My mind raced as Lisa led me further into the house. The air felt heavy, thick with tension. I had no idea what was going on, but I could feel the weight of something unspoken hanging between us. She led me to the living room, her footsteps hesitant as she sat down on the couch. Her eyes avoided mine as she motioned for me to sit beside her. I took a deep breath and sat down, waiting for her to say something. For a long moment, she didn't speak. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the ticking of the clock on the wall, but all I could focus on was her face. Something was wrong, I could tell. "Dad, I've been trying to protect you," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't keep this from you anymore." My heart skipped a beat. Protect me? From what? What could be so bad that she felt the need to keep it a secret? I looked at her, waiting for her to continue. "It's about Mark," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "Mark. My son-in-law. I had always liked him, always trusted him. He was a good guy, or so I thought." "What about Mark?" I asked, my voice trembling with confusion. Lisa took a shaky breath and looked down at her hands. "He's been hiding something from you. From all of us." The words hit me like a wave, crashing over me with an intensity one wasn't prepared for. What could he have been hiding? "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice tight with disbelief. She swallowed hard, her eyes filled with shame. "Dad, he's been having an affair. With someone I know." I froze. The room seemed to close in around me. An affair? With someone she knew? The world tilted on its axis as I tried to process what she was saying. "What do you mean, with someone you know?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She nodded, her lips trembling. It's my best friend, Sarah." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Sarah. I had known her for years. She had been a part of our family gatherings, always so friendly and supportive. How could this be happening? How could Mark betray us like this? "I didn't know what to do, Dad," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to destroy everything, but I couldn't just sit back and watch anymore. I thought you should know." I sat there, stunned, unable to form a response. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. My daughter was sitting right beside me, her heart broken, and all I could think about was the betrayal, the lies that had been hidden right under our noses. What else had I missed? What else was I blind to? I sat in silence, trying to digest everything Lisa had just told me. My mind was reeling, still unable to grasp the weight of her words. Mark, my son-in-law, the man I had welcomed into our family with open arms, was having an affair with Sarah, my daughter's best friend. How had I missed this? How could this betrayal have gone unnoticed for so long? Lisa's eyes were filled with tears, but there was something else in her gaze too, guilt, perhaps, for keeping this secret from me. "I didn't want to hurt you, Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I could fix it without you knowing, but now it's all falling apart." I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that it would be okay, but I couldn't. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my chest, and I couldn't figure out how to respond. "I trusted him," I finally said, my voice hoarse. "I thought Mark was a good man. How could he do this?" Lisa reached out and touched my arm, her face full of anguish. "I don't know, Dad. I really don't know. I just found out about it a few weeks ago. I didn't want to believe it at first, but when I saw them together, I couldn't ignore it anymore." The room felt smaller, the air heavier with each passing second. I had never imagined something like this happening in my family. I had always believed that we were different, that we were strong, united. But now, everything felt fragile. My mind raced as I tried to piece together the clues I had missed. How many times had I invited Sarah over for dinner? How many times had I trusted her with my family? I thought about the times I had been away on business, the long hours Mark had worked late. Was I just blind to what was happening? "What are we supposed to do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lisa wiped her eyes and looked down at her hands. I don't know, Dad. I just thought you should know. You deserve to know the truth. But I don't want to tear the family apart. I don't want to lose Mark, and I don't want to lose Sarah either. I don't know how to fix this. I stood up from the couch, my hands trembling. I needed to think. I needed some space. I don't know what to say, Lisa, I said, my voice distant. I need time to process all of this. I never expected something like this to happen in my own home. I walked to the window, looking out into the dark night, the world outside seeming just as lost as I felt inside. The silence between us was deafening, but in that moment, I didn't know how to break it. How do you fix a family when the trust has been shattered beyond repair? The following days felt like I was walking through a fog. My mind couldn't seem to focus on anything, the weight of what I had learned hanging heavily on my chest. I kept replaying the conversation with Lisa over and over again in my head, her words echoing in my ears. I didn't want to hurt you, she had said, and I couldn't help but wonder if she was right. She had kept this secret from me, trying to protect me from the pain. But now, the pain felt inevitable, unavoidable. I had tried to distract myself, to focus on work, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face. I saw Mark's face. I couldn't believe that they had betrayed me like this. I couldn't believe that they had betrayed my family. The silence in my house was suffocating. Lisa had stayed at her place for a few days, giving me space, but I knew that she was struggling too. I knew that she felt just as lost as I did. I thought about calling Mark, asking him what had happened, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. What could I possibly say? What words could fix this? There was a part of me that still wanted to believe that this was all a misunderstanding, that maybe Lisa was wrong, that maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But deep down, I knew it was true. I knew that what Lisa had told me was real. The truth had a way of seeping into your bones, and once it settled there was no shaking it loose. One evening, I decided to take a walk. The cool air felt like a brief escape from the turmoil inside. I walked through the neighborhood, my footsteps steady but heavy. I didn't know where I was going, just that I needed to get out of that house, away from the silence. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and the world felt distant, as though I were on the outside looking in. I came to a park and sat on a bench, staring out at the empty playground. I thought about Lisa, about how she had looked when she told me the truth. She was hurting, just like I was. And I thought about Mark, about the trust that had been shattered. I wondered if it was possible to rebuild anything after such a betrayal. Would our family ever be the same again? Would I ever look at Mark the same way again? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't let this destroy me. I couldn't let this tear my family apart. There had to be a way forward, a way to find peace in the chaos. But first, I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. The following week was one of the hardest of my life. The house felt emptier than ever, and the silence was almost unbearable. I spent most of my time alone, trying to make sense of everything. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stuck in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I thought about what Lisa had told me, the weight of it pressed down on me even more. Mark, my son-in-law, the man I had treated like my own son, had betrayed me, and Sarah, someone I had considered part of the family, was involved too. How could I have been so blind? How had I missed the signs? I knew I couldn't keep running from it. I had to face the reality of what had happened, but the question kept lingering in my mind: what now? I needed to talk to Lisa. I needed to hear her side, to understand what she was feeling. So I called her. She picked up on the first ring, her voice sounding hesitant. "Dad?" she asked softly. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I need to know what you want to do. We can figure this out together." There was a pause on the other end, and I could tell she was holding back her emotions. "I don't know, Dad. I just want things to go back to normal. I want my family to be whole again." Her voice cracked, and I felt a lump form in my throat. "I know, Lisa," I said. I want that too. But we can't ignore what's happened. We have to face it. We can't pretend it didn't happen. She let out a long sigh. I know. I just don't want to lose anyone. I could hear the fear in her voice, and it mirrored the fear I had been feeling all along. The fear of losing everything we had worked so hard to build. We'll figure it out, I said, though I didn't know if I believed it. But we have to be honest with each other. And with Mark. It's the only way forward. After we hung up, I sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. The weight of the situation was still crushing, but I knew one thing for sure: if we were going to move forward, I couldn't hide from the truth anymore. I needed to confront Mark. I needed to hear his side, to understand why he had done what he did. The truth was out there, and I couldn't keep running from it. It was time to face it, no matter how painful it would be. The next day, I called Mark. I couldn't put it off any longer. I needed answers, and I needed to hear his side of the story. He picked up on the third ring, and for a moment neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, heavy and thick with all the unspoken words. Mark, I said finally, trying to keep my voice steady. We need to talk. There was a long pause on the other end before he replied, his voice sounding almost defeated. I know, Robert. I know. I don't understand, I said, my voice rising just a little, the frustration starting to break through. How could you do this? How could you betray not just me, but my daughter, my family? There was another pause, and then he spoke, his voice quiet. I never meant for it to happen this way, he said. It just did. His words didn't make sense to me. How could something like this just happen? There was no way that it could have been that simple. Mark, you've known Sarah for years, I said, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. How could you keep this from me? From all of us? He sighed deeply, the sound filled with regret. I was afraid, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Afraid of what you would think. Afraid of losing everything. I've made so many mistakes, Robert, and now it's all coming back to bite me. I was quiet for a moment, letting his words sink in. Afraid of losing everything? I asked. What about Lisa? What about your family? There was another long silence, and then Mark spoke again, his words slow and deliberate. I never wanted to hurt her, he said, his voice breaking slightly. But it happened. And now I don't know how to fix it. His admission hung in the air, the weight of it pressing down on both of us. You have to tell her, Mark, I said firmly. You have to be honest with her. She deserves that much. He didn't respond right away, but I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. I will, he said eventually. But I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if I can make it right. I sat there for a moment, thinking about everything that had been said. Mark was broken, but that didn't change what had happened. It didn't change the betrayal that had already torn through our family. You'll have to face the consequences, I said quietly, my voice calm but firm. And so will I. But for now, all we can do is be honest. That's the first step. I hung up the phone, feeling more exhausted than I had in days. The conversation had given me a small sense of closure, but it also left me with more questions. The truth was out there now, but what did it really mean for us? What did it mean for our family? The days that followed were filled with an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. Mark and I hadn't spoken much since that phone call, but I knew he was trying to make things right. Lisa, on the other hand, had been distant. I couldn't blame her. How could she look at Mark the same way after everything that had happened? How could she trust him again? I spent my days walking around the house, thinking about everything that had come to light. The truth had settled in, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. Every time I looked at Lisa, I saw the hurt in her eyes. Every time I thought about Sarah, I felt a wave of betrayal. The family I had worked so hard to build, to protect, was falling apart, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't fix it. But something inside me knew that if I didn't act soon, everything would slip through my fingers. I couldn't let that happen. I needed to talk to Lisa, to really talk to her. We couldn't keep living like this, in silence, avoiding the truth. She was my daughter, and no matter how much pain I was in, I had to be there for her. I found her sitting in the kitchen one afternoon, staring out the window, lost in thought. The sunlight cast long shadows across the table, and for a moment, everything felt still. "Lisa," I said softly, pulling up a chair beside her. She looked up, her eyes tired but steady. "How are you holding up?" She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "I don't know, Dad. I'm trying. But everything's a mess." "I know," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of the situation. "But we can't keep pretending that nothing happened. We need to face this together." She turned to face me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I don't know if I can forgive him, Dad. I don't know if I can trust Mark again." Her voice cracked, and I could see the pain she was carrying. "You don't have to forgive him right away," I said, reaching for her hand. "But we have to start somewhere. If we're going to heal, we need to talk about it. We need to be honest with each other, no matter how hard it is." She looked at me, her expression softening for the first time in days. "I don't know if I can do it, but I'll try." I nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "That's all I can ask for. We'll get through this, Lisa. Together." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind me that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild what had been broken. The days that followed felt like I was walking in a fog, the heavy weight of the situation pressing on me with each step. I had spoken with Lisa, and we had agreed to try to move forward, but the uncertainty still lingered in the air. Mark's betrayal was hard to ignore, and I knew the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. I thought about what I could do to fix things, but the truth was, there was no quick fix. Trust had been broken, and it wasn't something that could be repaired overnight. But I had to try. Lisa was trying, and that gave me hope. I knew it would take time, but I couldn't just sit back and wait for everything to fall apart. The phone call with Mark was still fresh in my mind. His voice had been filled with regret, but that didn't change what had happened. He had made a choice, and now he had to face the consequences. It wasn't just about him anymore, it was about all of us. The damage had been done, and I could only hope that, with time, we could heal. I needed to see Mark. I needed to hear him say, in person, what he had said over the phone. I couldn't just leave it as it was. So I called him. It was early in the morning, and I could hear the tiredness in his voice when he answered. "Robert," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I know I've messed up." I could feel his shame, but it didn't change anything. "Mark," I said, my voice calm, but firm. "We need to talk. You and me. Face to face." There was a long pause before he responded. "I know. I'll be there." It wasn't easy, but I knew it was something I had to do. For Lisa, for myself, for our family. I wasn't sure what would come out of it, but I knew that avoiding the truth wasn't the answer. I needed closure, and I needed to know where we stood. I didn't want to live in a world of half-truths anymore. When Mark arrived, I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He looked like a man who had been through a storm, and I didn't know if that storm was over yet. He sat down across from me, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. The tension in the room was thick, but I knew it had to be addressed. "Mark," I said finally, "you need to take responsibility for what you've done. This can't go on any longer." He nodded, his face a mask of regret. "I know," he whispered. "I'm sorry, Robert. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I never wanted to hurt anyone. I messed up. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It wasn't going to fix everything, but it was a step forward. And in that moment, that was enough." Mark's apology had been the beginning of something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but I knew I had to face it. The tension between us, the years of trust shattered in an instant, all weighed heavily on my shoulders. I thought back to the man I had once welcomed into my family, the one I had trusted with my daughter's life, and I couldn't reconcile that image with the man sitting across from me now. The silence hung in the air, thick with the uncertainty of what would come next. "I don't know what to say, Mark," I said finally, my voice quiet but steady. "I want to believe you, I really do. But what you did, it's not something that just goes away." He nodded slowly, the guilt evident in his eyes. "I know," he whispered. "I've hurt you, and I've hurt Lisa. I don't expect things to be fixed overnight, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right." I wanted to believe him, but the words felt hollow. I had heard similar promises before, and they never seemed to stick. "Actions speak louder than words, Mark," I said, my voice firm. "You can't just apologize and expect everything to go back to normal. You need to prove that you're willing to do the work." He looked down, his hands trembling slightly. "I know. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I just don't know if I can fix what's broken." The vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. For a moment I saw the man he used to be, the man who had cared for my daughter, the man who had been a part of our family for years. But the damage had been done, and no amount of regret would change that. I stood up from the table, the weight of the decision settling on me. "I can't do this for you, Mark," I said. "You have to take responsibility, not just with me, but with Lisa too. You can't hide from the truth anymore." He stood up as well, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "I know. And I will. I'm sorry for everything." I nodded, feeling a sense of finality in his words. "We'll see if your actions match your apology," I said quietly. As I walked out of the room, I felt a strange sense of resolve. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. But maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward healing. I didn't know what the future held for Mark, Lisa, or me, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the past. It was time to move forward, one step at a time. The following days felt like a slow-motion replay of everything that had happened. Mark's apology had been a start, but the distance between us was still there, and Lisa was still struggling with what to do next. I could see it in her eyes, the confusion and hurt, the desire to move on but not knowing how. We all felt it. The weight of the situation was still heavy on our shoulders. I couldn't help but think about everything that had led to this point. The years of trust, the moments I had shared with Mark, all of it seemed so far away now, like a dream that had turned into a nightmare. I knew it wouldn't be easy to rebuild, but I also knew it had to start with the truth. Mark had promised to be better, and Lisa had promised to try, but none of it would matter if we didn't take the first step forward together. I decided to reach out to Lisa again. I needed to know where she stood. She had been quiet for days, withdrawn, and I could tell she was wrestling with her own emotions. "Lisa," I said when I found her in the kitchen, "we need to talk. It's been days, and I can see the pain in your eyes. I know this isn't easy, but we need to face this together." She looked up at me, her eyes red from crying, but there was a strength behind them that hadn't been there before. "I know, Dad," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I've been thinking about it a lot. I don't know if I can forgive him, but I want to try. I don't want to lose him, but I also don't want to lose myself in all of this." I stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to forgive him right away. Take your time. But know that I'm here for you, no matter what you decide. And if you need to talk to him, if you need to ask him anything, I'll be right here." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't want to keep living in the past, Dad. But I'm scared. I'm scared that things won't be the same, that I won't be able to trust him again." "I understand," I said softly. "But trust takes time to rebuild. And if you want to try, then you need to take that first step. We all do." We stood there in silence for a moment, and I could feel the weight of her decision hanging in the air. It wasn't going to be easy, and I couldn't promise that everything would be okay. But one thing was clear: if we were going to move forward, we had to face the truth together. And together, we would try to rebuild what had been broken. The days passed in a blur, and the air in the house seemed to grow heavier with each conversation we had. Lisa and I had talked more, and while there were still moments of doubt and confusion, I could see her trying to find a way forward. The distance between her and Mark remained, but she was starting to let go of some of the anger. She was ready to take that first step, but it wasn't going to be easy. Mark was doing his part too. He had apologized more than once, but actions, not words, were what mattered. I could tell he was trying, but whether it was enough to heal the wounds he had caused was still uncertain. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I found myself thinking about the family we used to be. The warmth of our dinners, the laughter that filled the house, it all seemed so distant now. But something inside me told me that we weren't lost forever. It would take time, yes, but maybe there was hope. Maybe we could rebuild brick by brick, even if it meant taking things one day at a time. I picked up my phone and dialed Mark's number. It rang twice before he picked up, and I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Robert?" he asked, his tone cautious. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's time we faced this as a family. I'm willing to try, but I need to know if you are too." There was a long pause, and then he spoke, his voice filled with determination. "I've already lost so much, Robert. But, if there's any chance at fixing this, I'll do whatever it takes." His words were a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "That's what I need to hear, Mark. You've hurt a lot of people, but it's not too late to make things right. We just need to be honest, with each other, and with ourselves." As I hung up the phone, I felt a shift in the air. Maybe it was the beginning of something new, or maybe it was just the first step toward healing. But one thing was clear, we couldn't move forward unless we were all willing to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. It wasn't going to be easy, but we had to try. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like we might just have a chance.